When I was 14, my mother screamed, "Get out of my car!" shoving me out at 2 a.m. on a deserted. My name is Christy, and I just turned 25 last week. 11 years ago, my life changed forever on a deserted highway at 2 a.m. I still remember my mother screaming, "Get out of my car!" before shoving me out into the darkness. The memory of her new husband laughing as they drove away still haunts me sometimes. But tonight, the tables have finally turned. If you want to know what real karma looks like, stick around. Let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button before we dive into how a forgotten child became the architect of perfect justice. Before my world crumbled, life with my mom. Susan was simple but happy. We lived in a small 2-bedroom house in the suburbs of Minneapolis. The walls were thin, the plumbing temperamental, but it was home. Every Sunday morning, Mom and I would make blueberry pancakes together while dancing to 80s music in our pajamas. She called me her little sidekick, her reason for smiling. I remember how proud she was when I won the spelling bee in 4th grade. She worked extra shifts at the hospital where she was a nurse just to buy me a special dress for the competition. That night, she took me for ice cream and told me I could be anything I wanted to be. "Christy, you are the smartest, kindest girl I know," she said, wiping chocolate from my chin. "One day the whole world will see what I see in you." My father died when I was 7. A drunk driver hit him on his way home from work. I remember sitting at his funeral, not fully understanding why Mom couldn't stop crying or why Dad was sleeping in that strange box. After that, everything changed. Mom started working longer hours. Her eyes carried a sadness that never fully went away. For years, it was just us against the world. She would help me with homework at night, even when I could see exhaustion etched on her face. When my bike was stolen, she saved for 3 months to buy me a new one. When I had nightmares about Dad, she would crawl into my twin bed and hold me until I fell back asleep. I learned to cook simple meals by the time I was 10. I would have dinner waiting when she came home late. Our roles sometimes blurred. I became her little caretaker as much as she was mine. On her birthday, I would save my allowance to buy her favorite perfume from the drugstore. The smile on her face made every penny worth it. Our small house became our fortress. The kitchen table doubled as my study space. The cramped living room was where we would build blanket forts and watch movies on Friday nights. Every corner held memories of laughter and whispered secrets. Photos of Dad stayed prominently on the mantel. Mom would tell me stories about him making sure I never forgot his laugh, or how he could fix anything with duct tape and determination. School became my sanctuary. I threw myself into books and learning, bringing home perfect report cards that Mom would proudly display on the refrigerator. My teachers often commented on my maturity and work ethic. What they didn't understand was that excelling in school was my gift to Mom, my way of making her burdens lighter. "As long as we have each other, we have everything," she would say, tucking me in at night. "You are my whole world, Christy." Looking back, I can pinpoint the exact moment everything started to unravel. I was 13 when Mom came home with an unusual brightness in her eyes. She was humming while making dinner, something she hadn't done in years. "I met someone today," she said casually, but I could hear the excitement beneath her words. "His name is Roger. He's a financial advisor at the hospital. He asked me out for coffee." I smiled and hugged her, genuinely happy to see a spark return to her eyes. How could I have known that this moment would be the beginning of the end of everything I knew and loved? That this man would systematically destroy the unbreakable bond between a mother and daughter? That one day the woman who once called me her whole world would abandon me on a deserted highway in the middle of the night? The transformation was so subtle at first that I almost missed the warning signs. By the time I recognized the danger, it was already too late. Roger walked into our lives like a character from one of those romantic movies Mom loved to watch. Tall, with salt and pepper hair, and an expensive watch that caught the light whenever he gestured. He arrived at our door for their first official date with flowers for Mom and a book about astronomy for me, having remembered Mom mentioning my interest in stars. "A beautiful gift for a brilliant young lady," he said with a smile that seemed genuine. I remember thinking how his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, just like Dad's used to. The first few months were like a dream. Roger took us to restaurants where the menus had no prices listed. He brought Mom jewelry that made her blush and educational toys for me that must have cost hundreds of dollars. For my 14th birthday, he surprised me with a telescope that I had been eyeing for months. "Every future scientist needs the right tools," he said, helping me set it up in our backyard. That night, as I looked at Saturn's rings for the first time, I thought maybe, just maybe, our little family could expand to include this man who made Mom laugh again. Weekend trips to nearby lakes, impromptu picnics in the park, museum visits. Roger seemed to have endless resources and time for us. He talked about investments and financial portfolios with such authority that even I, a 14-year-old with no interest in money matters, found myself impressed. He made Mom feel safe in ways she hadn't since Dad died, and for that I was willing to ignore the occasional moments when his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Your mom is special," he told me once while she was getting ready for a date. "She deserves everything beautiful in this world. Don't you think?" I nodded, not realizing he was already positioning himself as Mom's champion against an enemy that didn't exist. The proposal came 6 months after they met. Roger got down on one knee at an expensive restaurant, presenting a diamond ring that caught the chandelier light so brilliantly that Mom gasped. She said yes through tears of joy, while I clapped along with the other diners, ignoring the slight unease forming in my stomach. "We're going to be a family," Mom said later that night, her face glowing with happiness. "A real family again, Christy. Isn't that wonderful?" The wedding was small but elegant. I was Mom's only bridesmaid. Roger had business associates rather than friends standing beside him. I noticed how he checked his phone throughout the ceremony, how his vows seemed rehearsed rather than heartfelt. But Mom was radiant in her ivory dress, and I pushed my concerns aside for her sake. Everything accelerated after the wedding. Within 2 weeks, our little house was sold, and we moved into Roger's sprawling 4-bedroom home across town. My new school was an hour away by bus. My old friends became increasingly difficult to see. "This neighborhood has much better opportunities," Roger explained when I expressed sadness about leaving my school. "The connections you make here will serve you better in life." My bedroom in the new house was 3 times the size of my old one, with an ensuite bathroom and walk-in closet. But it felt cold and personal. Mom decorated it with expensive furniture that a catalog consultant had recommended, not understanding that I missed my mismatched furniture and the glow-in-the-dark stars Dad had helped me stick on my old ceiling. The first time I noticed Mom changing was after I accidentally interrupted Roger's work call. I had a question about a school project and didn't realize he was on the phone in his home office. The door had been ajar, not closed. Roger's face darkened with annoyance and he cut his call short. Later that evening, Mom took me aside. "Christy, we need to respect Roger's space," she said, her voice carrying an edge I'd never heard before. "His work is important. It pays for all of this." She gestured around at our new home. "I just needed help with homework," I said, confused by her tone. "You need to grow up a bit," she replied. "Roger isn't used to children. He's making adjustments for us. We need to do the same for him." Children. The word stung. I was 14, hardly a child anymore. And the way she separated Roger from us, as though we were a burden he was graciously tolerating, sent a chill through me. For the first time, I felt like an outsider in my own family. That night, I overheard them talking about me. "She needs structure, discipline," Roger was saying. "Susan's been too permissive with her." "She's a good kid," Mom replied, but her defense sounded weak, uncertain. "Of course she is," Roger agreed smoothly. "But good kids become great adults with the right guidance. You want her to succeed in life, don't you?" The next day, Mom presented me with a list of new house rules: specific study hours, limited phone time, chores assigned with military precision. My protests died on my lips when I saw the determined set of her jaw, so different from the warm, understanding mother I had known all my life. Within 3 months of the wedding, Mom and I barely spoke beyond necessary interactions. She was always busy with charity committees, lunch meetings, or helping Roger entertain clients. Our Sunday pancake tradition disappeared. When I asked about it, Mom looked almost confused, as if trying to remember a dream. "We have brunch at the club on Sundays now," she said dismissively. "Much more civilized than making a mess in the kitchen." I watched her transform from my loving, attentive mother into Roger's perfect wife. Her wardrobe changed. Her laugh changed. Even the way she spoke changed, adopting Roger's vocabulary and inflections. It was like watching someone being slowly erased and redrawn according to someone else's design. And through it all, Roger was carefully, methodically driving a wedge between us that grew wider with each passing day. By the summer after the wedding, I barely recognized my life or my mother. Roger had established himself as the unquestioned authority in our home, and Mom deferred to him on everything from household decisions to my education and social activities. The first time Roger criticized me directly, Mom was out shopping with her new friends, wives of Roger's business associates. I was practicing piano, an activity Roger had insisted would develop discipline and cultural refinement. "Your technique is sloppy," he said, standing in the doorway with a glass of scotch. "You're wasting my money on these lessons if you can't even bother to practice properly." "I'm trying my best," I replied, my fingers suddenly stiff with nervousness. "Your best," he scoffed. "If this is your best, then I worry for your future. Mediocrity isn't tolerated in this household." That night, I told Mom what happened, expecting her to defend me. Instead, she frowned. "Roger is investing a lot in your future, Christy. The least you could do is show some gratitude and effort." It was as if a stranger had replaced my mother. The woman who once proudly displayed my awkward art projects now seemed embarrassed by my every imperfection. As fall approached, Roger took control of our finances completely. Mom surrendered her paycheck and credit cards, accepting a household allowance instead. When I questioned this arrangement, Mom snapped at me. "Roger has an MBA from Wharton. He knows what he's doing with money. It's a relief not having to worry about bills anymore." Meals became tense affairs. Roger would interrogate me about school, finding fault with even my A grades. "An A in English is expected. An A- in algebra is disappointing. The Williams girl got into Princeton with a perfect GPA. But I suppose we have different standards in this family." Mom would sit silently, occasionally shooting me pleading glances to just agree with whatever Roger said. After particularly tense dinners, I started being sent to eat alone in the kitchen while they dined in the formal dining room. "Adult conversation isn't appropriate for children," Roger would say, though I was nearly 15 by then. One afternoon, I came home to find Mom going through my room. "What are you doing?" I asked, shocked to see my journals and private belongings scattered on the bed. "Roger thinks you might be hiding things from us," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Teenagers do that." "So you're searching my room, Mom? How could you—" "Don't be so dramatic, Christy. This is Roger's house, and he has a right to know what's happening in it." I felt violated, betrayed by the one person who was supposed to protect me. "Would Dad have ever done this?" I asked quietly. Her hand struck my cheek before I could react. Not hard, but the shock of it silenced us both. My mother had never, ever laid a hand on me before. "Don't you dare bring your father into this," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Roger is your father now." "He's not my father," I replied, tears welling in my eyes. "And you're not the mother I knew." Something flickered in her eyes, then a brief recognition, perhaps even regret. But it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "Grow up, Christy. The world doesn't revolve around you anymore." The incident at school happened a month later. I had been struggling with depression, my grades slipping from straight A's to B's and C's. A concerned teacher called home after I fell asleep in class for the third time that week. When I got home, Roger was waiting, the vein in his forehead pulsing with anger. "Embarrassing us at school, making your mother look like she can't control her own child." "I haven't been sleeping well," I tried to explain. "Excuses are for failures," he cut in. "No extracurricular activities for a month. No phone, no computer except for homework." "That's not fair." "Life isn't fair," he sneered. "The sooner you learn that, the better." Mom stood in the doorway, arms crossed, saying nothing. Her silence hurt more than Roger's words. That night, I heard them arguing about me. "She's becoming a problem," Roger said. "Always moping around, challenging my authority. It's affecting our home life." "She's just adjusting," Mom replied weakly. "It's been nearly a year, Susan. This isn't adjustment, it's defiance. My colleague James sent his difficult daughter to boarding school, straightened her right out." "Boarding school? That's a bit extreme." "Is it?" Or is allowing her to continue undermining our marriage extreme? The next day, boarding school brochures appeared on the kitchen counter. A clear threat. I tried one last time to reach my mother. I waited until Roger was at a business dinner, then made Mom's favorite tea and brought it to her in the living room. "Mom, can we talk like we used to?" She looked up from her magazine surprised. For a moment, I glimpsed my real mother behind the carefully applied makeup and designer clothes. "About what, sweetie?" The endearment so long absent gave me courage. "About us. About how everything has changed. Mom, I miss you. I miss us." She set down her tea, her hands trembling slightly. "Christy, change is part of life. Sometimes we have to adapt. But we've changed so much that I don't recognize us anymore. You used to say I was your whole world. You were a child then. I needed to be everything for you. But now we both need to grow and expand our worlds. Roger has given us opportunities I could never provide alone." "At what cost?" I asked. "You've given up your independence, your job, even your relationship with me." Her face hardened. "That's enough. You don't understand adult relationships. Roger loves us. He wants what's best for us." "He wants what's best for himself," I countered. "And he's using us to get it." "Go to your room," she said coldly. "I won't listen to you disrespect the man who put a roof over your head." "Dad put a roof over our heads too," I said quietly. "And he never made us feel like we had to earn the right to be loved." Something broke in her expression, then pain and fury mingling. "Your father is gone, Christy. He's never coming back. Roger is here. Roger stayed. Remember that." I retreated to my room, understanding finally that I had lost my mother completely to this man who had rewritten her identity to suit his needs. The laptop incident happened the following week. Roger had left his computer open on the kitchen counter while he took a call. I was getting water and accidentally knocked over my glass. Water splashed onto the keyboard. I panicked, quickly wiping it dry with my sleeve. The computer seemed fine, still running normally. I closed it and went back to my homework, hoping Roger wouldn't notice. But later that night, when Roger went to use his laptop, it wouldn't turn on. The explosion that followed was nuclear. Roger stormed into my room, laptop in hand, face contorted with rage. "Did you do this? Did you touch my computer?" "I spilled some water," I admitted. "But it was working fine afterward, I swear." "Do you have any idea what was on this client information financial records?" "Everything," he shouted. "This is deliberate sabotage." Mom appeared in the doorway, alarmed by the shouting. "What happened?" "Your daughter destroyed my laptop. Thousands of dollars of equipment and irreplaceable data gone." "It was an accident," I pleaded, looking to Mom for support. "I didn't mean to." Roger turned to Mom, his voice dangerously quiet. "This is what I was talking about, Susan. The constant disrespect, the carelessness. She's doing this deliberately to undermine me." "No, I'm not," I protested. "Christy, how could you be so irresponsible?" Mom asked, her voice tight with disappointment. "It was just water, an accident. Please, Mom, you have to believe me." But I could see in her eyes that she had already accepted Roger's version of events. In that moment, I knew I had been replaced in her heart. Whatever loyalty or love she once felt for me had been transferred entirely to him. "I can't do this anymore," Roger declared. "Either she goes to boarding school or I need to rethink this entire arrangement." Mom paled at the implied threat to their marriage. "Let's discuss this rationally," she said, leading him from my room. I sat on my bed, listening to them argue downstairs, hearing my fate being decided without my input. Hours later, the house fell silent. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. Around midnight, my door opened. Mom stood there, her face in shadows. "Pack a bag," she said flatly. "We're going for a drive." "Where?" I asked, my heart racing with sudden fear. "Just do as you're told for once," she replied. "Roger and I have made a decision." As I threw some clothes into a backpack, a terrible realization dawned. This wasn't a drive to discuss things. This wasn't a cool down period. Something much worse was coming. But even in my most frightened state, I could never have imagined what would happen next. The digital clock on the dashboard read 1:47 a.m. as we drove in tense silence. Mom behind the wheel, Roger in the passenger seat, me in the back like a prisoner being transported. No one had spoken since we left the house 20 minutes earlier. We were on Highway 12, a stretch of road that became increasingly rural as we drove west out of the suburbs. Farms gave way to forests, streetlights became sparse, then non-existent. The headlights cut through a fog that had started to roll in, giving everything a surreal, nightmarish quality. "Where are we going?" I finally asked, my voice small in the oppressive silence. "Quiet," Roger snapped without turning around. "The adults are thinking." I caught Mom's eye in the rearview mirror. What I saw there chilled me to the bone. Not anger, not even disappointment. Nothing. A complete absence of feeling, as if she were looking at a stranger. "Mom?" I tried again, my voice breaking. "You heard Roger," she replied mechanically. "Be quiet." Another 10 minutes of silence. The highway narrowed to 2 lanes. We hadn't passed another car for miles. The fog thickened, wrapping around the car like ghostly fingers. I clutched my backpack to my chest, a child's instinctive gesture for comfort. Roger broke the silence. "Pull over at the next rest stop." Mom nodded, slowing the car as a small roadside area appeared through the fog. A concrete picnic table overflowing trash bins, a single street lamp casting yellow light in a small circle, and parked on the far side a semi-truck, its driver leaning against the cab smoking a cigarette, the ember glowing red in the darkness. Mom stopped the car but left the engine running. For a long, terrible moment, no one moved. Then Roger turned in his seat to face me. "Christy," he said, his voice frighteningly calm, "your mother and I have tried. God knows we've tried. But you are determined to destroy our happiness." "What know I?" "It's not working," he continued as if I hadn't spoken. "You in our home, you in our lives." "Roger, please," I whispered, understanding beginning to dawn. "Whatever I did, I'm sorry. I'll do better." "Too late for that," he said coldly. "We've made arrangements." Arrangements. I looked desperately at Mom, who stared straight ahead, hands still gripping the wheel. "Mom, what is he talking about?" "Your mother agrees with me," Roger said, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips. "Tell her, Susan." Mom turned, then her face illuminated by the dashboard lights. Her eyes were red, but dry. "We can't do this anymore, Christy. You need more than we can give you." "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice rising with panic. "Mom, you're scaring me." "Get out of the car," she said, the words falling like stones. I thought I'd misheard. "What?" Her voice rose suddenly to a scream that seemed to fill the entire car. "Get out of my car!" She reached back, unlatched my door, and shoved my shoulder hard. I tumbled out, my backpack falling beside me on the gravel. The shock was so complete that I couldn't even cry, couldn't speak, couldn't comprehend what was happening. Mom got out, walked around to the trunk, and returned with something in her hand. A $20 bill. She walked past me without a glance and approached the truck driver, who was watching the scene with confused interest. "Hey," she called to him, extending the money. "You heading east?" The trucker straightened up, glancing between Mom and me with growing concern. "Yeah, Boston eventually. What's going on here, lady?" Mom thrust the $20 bill at him. "Take this kid anywhere. I don't care where, just make sure he never comes back to my house again." The trucker didn't take the money. His cigarette hung forgotten between his fingers as he stared at Mom in disbelief. Roger called from the still open passenger window, laughing. "Finally getting rid of the dead weight. Trash belongs with trash, right, honey?" Mom stood frozen for a moment, the money still extended. Then she dropped it at the trucker's feet, turned without looking at me, and got back in the car. The trucker took a step toward me, concern etched on his weathered face. "Kid, you okay? Do you know these people?" Before I could answer, the car's engine revved and tires spun on gravel. My mother and Roger sped away, leaving me alone at a deserted rest stop at 2 a.m. with a stranger and a $20 bill lying in the dust. I stared after the disappearing taillights, waiting for them to break to turn around, for this to be revealed as some elaborate, cruel lesson. But the red lights grew smaller and smaller until they were swallowed by the fog and darkness. "That's my mom," I finally whispered, answering the trucker's question far too late. That was my mother. The reality of what had just happened crashed over me in waves. Abandoned, discarded, unwanted. The trucker was saying something, but his words were muffled by the roaring in my ears. The world tilted sideways, the yellow street lamp stretched and blurred, and then everything went black as I collapsed onto the cold gravel. I awoke to the gentle shaking of a rough, calloused hand on my shoulder and the smell of coffee. For a disorienting moment, I thought I was home, that Mom was waking me for school, that everything had been a nightmare. Then reality rushed back as my eyes focused on the concerned face of the truck driver. "There you are," he said, relief evident in his voice. "You gave me a scare passing out like that. Here, I got you some hot chocolate from my thermos." I sat up slowly, realizing I was inside the cab of his truck, a scratchy blanket draped over me. My backpack sat at my feet. Outside, dawn was breaking, pale light filtering through lingering fog. "How long was I out?" I asked, my voice raw. "About 20 minutes. Name's Frank, by the way. Frank Doherty." "Christy," I replied automatically, then took the offered cup, letting its warmth seep into my trembling hands. Frank ran a hand through his gray-streaked hair. "Christy, I need to ask you something important. Those people, the ones who left you here, was that really your mother?" I nodded, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. "And the man, her new husband, Roger?" Frank sighed heavily. "I thought so. Look, I called the police while you were out. They should be here any minute. What happened tonight isn't right. It's not legal, and it's not how parents are supposed to treat their kids no matter what." The mention of police sent a spike of anxiety through me. "Am I in trouble?" "No, honey, you're not in trouble. They are." His kind eyes hardened momentarily. "Abandoning a minor is a crime, and I sure as hell wasn't going to take their money and drive you away like they wanted." The $20 bill. I'd forgotten about it in the shock of everything else. "Did you pick it up, the money?" Frank shook his head. "Left it right where it fell. Blood money. Want nothing to do with it." Tears finally came, then silent streams down my cheeks. Not for the loss of the money, but for this small dignity preserved by a complete stranger, when my own mother had stripped me of all others. "Thank you," I whispered. "Nothing to thank me for, just being decent." We sat in silence as police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. I sipped the hot chocolate, trying to process the complete upheaval of my life in the span of a single night. "What happens now?" I asked finally. Frank scratched his beard. "Well, the police will want your statement. They'll try to contact your mother. Then likely social services gets involved." "Foster care." The words tasted bitter. "Probably, at least temporarily, unless you have other family who can take you in." I shook my head. Dad's parents had died before I was born. Mom's parents had disowned her when she got pregnant with me at 19. There were no aunts, no uncles, no one. The first police car pulled into the rest stop, lights flashing. A female officer approached cautiously. "Everything okay here?" she called. Frank stepped down from the cab, explaining the situation in low tones, while I remained inside finishing my hot chocolate and wondering if this was what shock felt like, this strange detachment, as I watched my life being discussed by strangers. The next few hours passed in a blur. More police arrived. Statements were taken. I recounted everything, my voice flat, emotionless. When asked for my home address and phone number, I provided them mechanically, part of me still expecting Mom to burst in at any moment to explain it was all a misunderstanding, to reclaim me. She never came. By noon, I was sitting in a social worker's office at the County Services Building. Ms. Winters was a thin woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She explained that officers had gone to our house but found no one home. They left notices and would continue trying to make contact. "In the meantime, we've arranged emergency placement for you," she explained. "The Bradleys have experience with temporary fostering. They'll take good care of you while we sort this out." "What if my mom doesn't want me back?" I asked, finally voicing my greatest fear. Ms. Winters' expression softened. "Let's cross that bridge if we come to it. For now, let's focus on getting you settled and making sure you're safe." The Bradleys were an older couple with a spacious home and 3 other foster children. Mrs. Bradley showed me to a small bedroom I would share with another girl, Zoe, who was 12, and had been with them for 2 months. She gave me toiletries, some borrowed clothes, and a notebook, to write down your thoughts if that helps. That night, lying in a strange bed under a strange roof, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had happened. I buried my face in an unfamiliar pillow and sobbed until there was nothing left inside me. Zoe, bless her, pretended not to notice, giving me the privacy of my grief. Days turned into weeks. Police finally made contact with Mom and Roger. According to Ms. Winters, they claimed I had run away after an argument, that they had been out looking for me when the police came. A blatant lie, but one that complicated matters. Will I have to go back to them? I asked, panic rising at the thought. Not immediately, if at all, Ms. Winters assured me. There's going to be an investigation. The truck driver, Mr. Doherty, is a credible witness, and your mother's story doesn't add up. Why wouldn't they report you missing if you ran away? A court date was set. I would have to testify about what happened. The thought terrified me, but not as much as the possibility of being forced back into that house. A month after being abandoned, I sat in a family court waiting room dressed in borrowed clothes that Mrs. Bradley had carefully ironed for the occasion. My stomach churned with anxiety. Christy, Ms. Winters appeared in the doorway. There's been a development. You won't need to testify today. Why not? I asked, confused but relieved. Your mother and Mr. Morrison have signed voluntary termination of parental rights. They've waived their claim to custody. The words took several seconds to process. They gave me up officially. Ms. Winters nodded, watching my reaction carefully. Yes, the judge has accepted their petition. You are now a ward of the state. I should have felt devastated. Instead, a strange calm settled over me. It was the confirmation of what I had already known that night on the highway. My mother had chosen Roger over me. Now it was just official. What happens to me now? I asked for the second time in as many months. We find you a more permanent placement, Ms. Winters said. The Bradleys are emergency foster parents. For long-term, we'd like to find a better match. 2 weeks later, I met the Williams family. Harold and Margaret Williams lived in a modest home filled with books. He was a retired English professor. She had been an elementary school teacher for 30 years. They had raised 3 children, now grown, and had been foster parents for over a decade. We specialize in teenagers, Margaret told me during our first meeting, her eyes twinkling behind round glasses. Everyone wants the cute little ones, but teenagers need homes too. And frankly, I find you all far more interesting conversationalists. Something about her straightforward manner broke through the walls I'd been building. For the first time since that night on the highway, I laughed genuinely. Moving in with the Williams was like stepping into a different universe. There were no eggshells to walk on, no tension humming in the air. Dinner was served at a table where everyone talked and listened with equal interest. My opinions were solicited, valued. When I had nightmares, Margaret would sit with me, not saying much, just being present until the panic subsided. Your mother made a terrible choice, she told me one night after a particularly bad dream. One day she may realize that and feel the full weight of what she's lost, but her choices aren't a reflection of your worth, Christy. They reflect her weaknesses, not yours. Harold helped me catch up on the schoolwork I'd missed, spending evenings at the kitchen table, patiently explaining algebra concepts I'd fallen behind on. When I expressed interest in business and finance, ironically given Roger's profession, he supplied me with books and arranged for me to meet a former student who worked in ethical investing. Knowledge is power, he would say. And the best revenge against those who hurt you is to build a life so full and rich that when you look back, they're just a small, sad chapter in your much greater story. As months turned into years, the raw wound of abandonment slowly scabbed over. I threw myself into school, graduating with honors. College applications went out, and acceptances came back. The day Harvard's letter arrived, Harold and Margaret celebrated with a cake they had prepared just in case. We knew you could do it, Margaret said, her eyes shining with tears. Full scholarship, too. Harold, our girl is going to Harvard. Our girl. 2 simple words that healed something broken inside me. The night before I left for college, I found a journal Margaret had left on my bed. Inside was an inscription, Christy. Some people are born into their forever family. Others have to find theirs along the way. Thank you for allowing us to be part of yours. Go change the world. Well, be here always. Love Mom and Dad if you'll permit us the honor of those titles. I cried then, but for the first time in years, they were tears of gratitude rather than grief. Harvard opened doors I never knew existed. I studied economics and business, driven by a determination to understand the financial world that Roger had used to manipulate my mother. During my sophomore year, I landed an internship at a prestigious investment firm in Boston. By junior year, I was working part-time in their research department while maintaining a 3.9 GPA. My thesis on ethical investing in urban development caught the attention of several major firms. Job offers poured in during my senior year. I accepted a position with Goldman Sachs, starting in their analyst program, with a salary that made me dizzy to contemplate. While my classmates spent their signing bonuses on apartments in trendy neighborhoods or new cars, I invested mine carefully. By 23, I had enough saved for a down payment on a small condo in Boston. By 24, I was being fast-tracked for promotion, having demonstrated an uncanny ability to identify undervalued properties for the firm's real estate division. On my 25th birthday, I received an offer to join a boutique investment firm specializing in distressed real estate. The salary was double what I was currently making with profit sharing that could potentially triple my income. I accepted without hesitation. My first major project was analyzing potential acquisitions in the Midwest. Page after page of properties' financial histories, market projections. And then buried in the data, a name jumped out at me. Morrison Property Holdings, LLC. Roger's company now flagged as a high-risk investment due to multiple defaults and pending foreclosures. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. After all these years, the universe had handed me a connection to my past. With hands that barely shook, I dug deeper. What I found both surprised me and confirmed old suspicions. Roger had been running a sophisticated shell game for years, leveraging properties beyond their value, using new investments to pay off old debts, all while maintaining a facade of success. But the house of cards was finally collapsing. His company owned a small development of luxury homes, including the one where he and my mother presumably still lived, and the bank was preparing to foreclose. An idea began to form, one that would require patience and careful planning. But after 11 years of building myself up from nothing, patience was something I had in abundance. I went to my new boss with a proposal our firm should acquire the debt on Morrison Property Holdings at a discount from the desperate bank, then strategically foreclose to maximize return on investment. I presented cold hard numbers showing how we could turn the properties around for a substantial profit. What I didn't mention was my personal connection or my real motivation. This wasn't about profit. This was about justice. 2 months of negotiations later, the deal was done. Our firm owned the debt. I was put in charge of the recovery strategy. The foreclosure notices went out exactly 11 years to the day after I had been abandoned on that highway. I made sure the process server delivered Roger's notice personally while I watched from across the street. He had aged poorly, his once commanding presence diminished by what appeared to be years of stress and likely alcohol abuse. He took the papers with shaking hands, his face draining of color as he read them. The final step was setting the eviction date October 17th, the exact date of my abandonment 11 years later. The symmetry felt right, even poetic. I wasn't prepared for what happened next. At precisely 2:13 a.m., a time that couldn't have been coincidental, my phone exploded with notifications. Text messages, voicemails, emails from addresses I didn't recognize, all from the same 2 people. Please help us. We have nowhere to go. The bank is taking everything. We'll be homeless. Your mother is sick, she needs stability. We made a terrible mistake. We can explain everything. Please call us. We're desperate. You're our only hope. 147 messages in total, voice notes of them crying, begging. In one particularly pathetic recording, I could hear Roger sobbing, his voice slurred. Please, son, we're sorry. We'll be on the streets by morning. You're our only hope. Son. He had called me son. They didn't even remember I was their daughter. Or perhaps in their panic they were sending the same message to anyone who might help them. I sat in my darkened apartment scrolling through their desperate pleas, feeling nothing but a distant sense of completion. The circle had closed. They had abandoned me with nothing but the clothes on my back and a $20 bill thrown in the dust. Now they were facing the same fate, reaching out to the child they had discarded as a last resort. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment. I could ignore them completely. I could respond with kindness they didn't deserve or cruelty they had earned. In the end, I chose truth. "Trash belongs with trash," I typed. "Don't ever darken my doorstep again." I pressed send, turned off my phone, and for the first time in 11 years, slept through the night without a single nightmare. The morning after sending my response, I sat on my balcony watching the sunrise, feeling lighter than I had in years. The weight of unresolved trauma, the questions about my worth, the lingering hope that someday my mother would realize what she had thrown away, all of it had dissipated like morning fog under the rising sun. Margaret called later that day, as she did every Sunday. Though I had never shared the full details of my revenge plan with her and Harold, they knew I had been working through my past. "You sound different today," she said, her voice warm with maternal intuition. "More at peace." "I am," I replied simply. "I finally let go of something I've been carrying for a long time." "I'm proud of you, Christy. Whatever it is, I'm proud of you." Those words meant more to me than she could ever know. In the weeks that followed, I monitored the situation with Roger and my mother from a professional distance. They were evicted as scheduled. Roger filed for bankruptcy. My mother, according to court records, had separated from him shortly after citing financial impropriety and emotional abuse in her divorce filing. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same patterns that had destroyed our family had eventually destroyed hers and Roger's. I wondered briefly if she ever connected those dots, if she ever recognized that she had sacrificed her daughter for a man who would ultimately betray her too. 6 months after the eviction, I received a letter forwarded through my firm's legal department. My mother had somehow tracked down where I worked. Her handwriting, once so familiar, now seemed like that of a stranger. I considered burning it unread, but curiosity won out. "Christy," the letter began, "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to read this. But I need to say it anyway. What I did to you was unforgivable. There is no excuse, though I spent years creating them in my mind. Roger was controlling and manipulative, but I was weak and selfish. I chose my comfort over my child. I have lived with that knowledge every day since. I won't ask to see you or speak to you. I won't intrude on the life you've built without me. I just wanted you to know that not a day goes by that I don't regret the choices I made. You deserved better. You deserved a mother who put you first. I failed you in every way possible. I am sober now. 2 years. Too late for us, I know. But I volunteer at a women's shelter trying to help mothers who are in abusive relationships see what I couldn't, that their children must always come first. If you've read this far, thank you for that small kindness. I wish you happiness, success, and love. All the things I should have given you. Susan." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. Not torn up, not burned, but not answered either. It was, I decided, a chapter I was not ready to revisit. Frank Doherty was easier to find than I expected. Still driving his route from Minnesota to Boston, now in his 60s and planning retirement. I sent a message through his company, and 2 weeks later we met at a diner just outside Boston. "Look at you," he said, standing to greet me, his weathered face breaking into a wide smile. "All grown up and fancy. Harvard graduate, big finance job. I've been following your story through Ms. Winters all these years." I hugged him, this man who had been the first to show me kindness when my world collapsed. "I wanted to thank you properly," I told him, "for what you did that night, for calling the police instead of just driving away." "Anyone would have done the same," he said, waving away my thanks. "But they didn't. You did." Over coffee, I told him about my life since that night. The Bradleys, the Williams, Harvard, my career. I left out the details of my revenge against Roger and my mother, saying only that justice has a way of finding people eventually. "I'm retiring next month," he mentioned as we finished our meal. "Looking at places to settle down. Something small, maybe in Maine or New Hampshire." "Actually, I have a proposition for you," I said, sliding an envelope across the table. Inside was the deed to a small cottage on the Maine coast that my firm had acquired in a package deal. It needed some work, but the location was spectacular ocean views, a small garden, peace and quiet. "I can't accept this," he protested, eyes wide with shock. "You can," I insisted. "Consider it an investment in someone who invested in me when I had nothing to offer in return." It took some convincing, but Frank finally accepted on the condition that I would visit regularly. "Bring those foster parents of yours too," he added. "They sound like my kind of people." As for the development where Roger and my mother had lived, I had other plans. Using my connections and a portion of my savings, I established a foundation to convert the property into transitional housing for families in crisis, particularly mothers and children fleeing domestic abuse. The Margaret and Harold Williams Center for Family Renewal opened 18 months later. My foster parents wept at the dedication ceremony when they saw their names on the building. "This isn't what we do this work for," Harold said, his voice choked with emotion. "I know," I replied. "That's exactly why you deserve it." The center became my passion project outside of work. I served on its board, helped secure ongoing funding, and occasionally spoke to the residents about my own journey from abandonment to empowerment. On one such evening, as I was leaving after a financial literacy workshop, I had conducted, a young girl about 14 approached me. "My mom says you understand," she said hesitantly, "about being thrown away." My heart constricted at her words, at the familiar pain in her eyes. "I do understand," I said gently. "Does it ever stop hurting?" she asked, her voice small. I considered giving her a comforting lie, but opted for honesty instead. "The hurt changes shape. It becomes less sharp, less consuming. And one day you realize it is transformed into something else: determination, resilience, compassion for others who are hurting." She nodded, absorbing this. "My mom's trying. She came back for me. Not everyone's mom comes back." "No," I agreed. "Not everyone's mom comes back. And that's not your fault ever. But you can still build something beautiful from what remains." As I drove home that night, I thought about the choices that shape our lives, both those made for us and those we make ourselves. My mother had made her choice 11 years ago on that deserted highway. Roger had made his. Frank had made a different choice that night. The Williams had made theirs when they opened their home to a broken teenager. And I had made mine, not to let abandonment define me, not to let bitterness consume me, even as I sought a justice that felt necessary for my own healing. The revenge I had orchestrated against Roger and my mother wasn't about making them suffer as I had suffered. It was about closing a circle, about demonstrating to myself that their power over me had ended. The girl I had once been terrified, alone, discarded on a dark highway no longer existed. In her place stood a woman who had rebuilt herself from the foundation up. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Margaret calling outside our usual Sunday schedule. "Harold and I have been talking," she said without preamble. "We'd like to legally adopt you." "Adopt me?" I laughed in surprise. "I'm 25 years old." "Adult adoption is a thing," she replied matter-of-factly. "We've done our research. We've been your parents in every way that matters for years. We'd like to make it official." Tears sprang to my eyes. "I'd be honored," I managed to say. "Good," she said briskly, though I could hear the emotion in her voice. "Harold will email you the paperwork tomorrow. And Christy, we love you. We always have." "I love you too," I replied. "Both of you." That night I stood on my balcony looking at the stars, remembering how I had once gazed through a telescope Roger had given me, believing it might be the beginning of a new family. I had been wrong then, but not about everything. A new family had found me, not the one I expected, but the one I needed. We don't get to choose the circumstances that wound us, but we do get to choose how we heal, who we welcome into our lives, and what we build from the rubble of our broken past. My mother once threw $20 into the dust and told a stranger to take me anywhere as long as I never returned. Instead, I found my own way, built my own home, created my own family of choice. The abandoned child became a woman who could help others find their way home too. The past doesn't have to define us. Sometimes the worst beginnings lead to the most beautiful destinations if we have the courage to keep walking forward. If you're watching this and your story resembles mine in any way, know that you are not defined by those who failed to love you properly. You are defined by your resilience, by your capacity for growth, by your willingness to transform pain into purpose. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after someone let you down? What gave you the strength to keep going? Share your story in the comments and remember to like and subscribe if this resonated with you. Sometimes sharing our darkest moments helps light the way for others still finding their path.